Oh,
There
it
we
does.
go.
There we go. Recording. Okay. Hello,
Okay.
everybody. Welcome to this seminar on what makes a successful writing group. And we're delighted to have Emma Scattergood here hosting this seminar for us. Now, Emma is a writer, author, and editor, or she was a writer, author, and editor for some of the UK's biggest publishing companies. When she moved to Bournemouth, she took on the role of senior lecturer in writing, editing, and publishing at Bournemouth University. She created the MA Creative Writing and Publishing course, as well as founding Fresher Publishing and the Bournemouth Writing Prize. And in terms of her charity work, she also co-founded and is still a trustee of Storywork, which is a children's writing charity, whose patron is Michael Rosen. She's also a lead facilitator for Art Called Scribe. And in 2023, Emma set out to walk and capture the Southwest Coast Path, which sounds like a huge, well, walk, really. So thank you so much, Emma, for joining us. Just before Emma kicks off on the seminar, I'm just going to mention a few things about the Bournemouth Writing Festival. So the ethos of the Writing Festival is to inspire writers to write and to create a writing community in our little corner of England, the sunny south coast. And we've been trying to create writing groups, and this is where this all stemmed from. And we have these things called writers' havens, where volunteers are going to be hosting informal writing groups in BCP libraries, and hopefully this seminar is going to kick that off. And in January is when they all start. So please have a look at the website to see where your nearest writing group is and who the host is going to be. So at the moment, they're all once a month. We'll see how they go, but please do join in and take part. And in terms of the Writing Festival, things are really gathering steam for the festivals on 26th, 27th, and 28th of April. It's all going to be held at the Pavilion Dance, which is in Lower Gardens. And we announced this week that we have some literary agents coming down from London, where you can book in a one-to-one session with them, where you can talk about your manuscript, pitch your manuscripts, see how marketable your book is, and get some feedback from your writing. And we've got a full jam-packed program coming up. I can't believe how much is going to be. 25th of January, Thursday, 25th of January at Street Goose in Bournemouth Town Centre, we're going to be holding a networking and launch event where we'll also be telling you about our writing competition. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Emma.
Oh, thank you so much, Dominic. And thank you for the very long introduction. Yeah, I'm really, really pleased to be here. I'm really delighted to have a chance to sort of reach out to so many of you, to either sort of with us here this evening or who are going to be coming and sort of watching it later on a recorded basis, because I understand we're clashing with an event. I'm just so pleased with everything that Dominic's doing. I mean, he's arrived like a tour de force, if that's the right phrase, in Bournemouth, and he's creating all these amazing opportunities for writers, and it's just fabulous to see it happening. And what I love is that I seem to have an idea about something, and then I turn around and Dominic's already enacting it. And one of the things that I've been hearing about since I left the university last year, and I've been working more in the community and running my own writing groups and things like that, is I've been hearing from so many people about what they're looking for, what they'd love to find in a writing group, or what they wish there was down in Bournemouth, or all these sort of conversations are being had, and then heard that Dominic had done this amazing thing and got this deal with the libraries, and there was this opportunity now to have these spaces in the libraries that could be the perfect vehicle for the sort of things that people are saying that they need. So I just felt it was a really nice time for us to sort of have a bit of a conversation about what makes a writing group, but that can be very different depending on who you are or the crowd that you want to work with. So there's lots of different things to consider, and so there's no right or wrong about what makes a good writing group in many ways, apart from maybe when it comes to one element that we're going to touch on later, which is about giving and receiving feedback. But in terms of what you people set up, or I'm saying that because I'm looking at the lovely faces in front on the screen in front of me at the moment, and I know some of these are people who have said that they want to be facilitators and host writing groups, and that's really great. But there might be other people who are joining us who are already in an existing writing group and are thinking that perhaps it needs a little refresh, perhaps there might be some other ways of doing things, and they're looking at it from that point of view. There might be some people who are going, oh, well, I've seen this list of what's going on in the libraries, but actually that's not going to work for me for whatever reason, because I can't get to a library space. And there might be people thinking, oh, I wish there could be an online version. And they might be thinking they might try and set that up themselves. So I'm going to be talking quite generally to hopefully just sow a few seeds of ideas for anyone in whatever sort of situation they are, and just say, well, look, there are these possibilities to have groups like this or groups like this, and then you can listen to me and completely ignore it, or you can listen to me and go, oh, there might be something in that, or there might be something in that, and begin to sort of shape and mold it, you know, as in a way that might work for you and the people that you talk to or that come to your group. I hope that makes sense. So my plan for this evening is to spend a little bit of time talking about the different types of groups that there might be, sort of the basic things that you might want to consider, particularly if you're setting one up now, and how it might work. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about giving and receiving feedback, because that's often a part of a group. We'll talk about that. And either in the middle of those kind of sections, if we think that there might be an appropriate pause, you know, I'll sort of stop and see if there's any questions on each section. But obviously I'll leave time at the end for a Q&A then. We've discussed this already, but I can't see the chat button. So if anyone is waving a hand madly or has been chatting, then please and I'm not seeing it, then please feel free to interrupt if you feel that it's a good time for me to pause and deal with the question. Okay, so without any further ado, then I will probably sort of launch into my prepared thing. I have notes. I have no slides. I have notes. So one of the things that I've realised, I think, over the past year for me, which is kind of coming back to the different reasons why people perhaps want to come and join a group. One of the things that's been for me an eye-opener, which might sound completely ridiculous, but it is exactly what Dominic said at the beginning, which is for how many people it is about that social interaction. It's about community. It's about not feeling isolated. It's about coming out and meeting other people. I was running a writers group actually in Christchurch Library this time last year, and I asked them what their main motivation was for coming, and for most of them it was social interaction. It was about community, and I don't know why that surprised me so much. I think the only excuse for me and my naivety is that, having come from that sort of education background, and I suppose myself having joined certain types of groups, I've tended to be in environments where the focus has been very much on the writing and the improving of the writing, and that's a great thing, and there's room for groups like that, but it has made me realise that there are lots of different sort of motivations for coming, and I think Dominic's absolutely spot on, and I'm sure you've already realised this yourselves, that for many people the main driver is that social interaction. And there are so many good things to get from a writing group. And again, this is why I'm so delighted it's happening, because it's not just about kind of getting out and meeting people, but it's about meeting like-minded people. And it's about being in a group where hopefully you're all there to support one another and support one another's writing dreams, and celebrate little successes or tell one another about opportunities, that sort of thing. It can also work well in terms of accountability. And I know that the writing festival's already, I think, running a sort of an accountability kind of group. But I know for sure, I mean, I was a journalist originally back in the day, and I know I'm someone that, I need a deadline. And if you've got a writing group and you're going to be meeting that week or that month or on a certain date, then having that sense of, oh, that's a deadline to work to, can be really useful for people as well. And then it is also about that sort of giving people the opportunity to maybe take their writing to the next stage. And I found when I was doing the one-to-ones recently in Bobby's, the people that I was talking to then were saying to me, they were people who were very keen on getting books published, and they were looking for trusted readers, and they were looking for people who would give them feedback that they might value. Those sort of being in that sort of environment where they felt they were getting valuable feedback that they could learn from, take their writing to the next level as well. But then I know there are other people that thrive on that idea of just meeting up weekly and just having lots of fun exercises, writing on the spot, and they don't want that pressure. They don't have the big dream of having the book published. It's just about trying lots of different things. So if you're thinking about setting up a group, you need to be aware that you might have all these different people with all these different types of dreams coming to you. So I think it's really useful for us as writers to be sort of clear with ourselves about what it is that we're hoping to gain from a group. Because if we enter a group where they are all very happy with their social interaction and doing lots of little writing exercises every week, and that's really nurturing them, then you're not going to go in and change them and get them to want to read your novel. So I think as writers, we need to be quite clear with ourselves about what we're hoping to gain from a group, and sort of take responsibility almost for checking in with established groups and seeing if that's what will suit us. And if there isn't a group out there that's already doing that, then maybe that's a time to do what you want. Then maybe that's a time to pause and think about, well, do I want to set one up myself? So I think we need to be clear ourselves on what we want. But I think also as writing groups, once you've got an established kind of structure for what you're doing and what your aims are and what your values are, I think don't hide that. But I think if you're advertising a group or if you're publicizing it, then do sort of say that this group does this. Find a neat way of kind of summing it up, or when people come and just have a trial session or get in touch with you, then sort of say, look, this is the kind of thing that we're doing, because then that will help everyone to be a lot happier, because everyone will have different expectations. Is everyone happy with that so far? Just while I plough on. Okay, thank you. So I think, it's recognizing that we all want different things. We might, you might want a mixture of things. I'm not saying it's that black and white. There will be, for some people, it will be, wanting to have a mixture. For some, I think what's quite different though is, I think what I'm going to be tending to talk about this evening is more sort of peer workshops, peer writing groups, rather than the type of group which I'd probably call a class instead, where someone is very much leading, is someone, you know, someone is sort of seeing themselves in the teacher mode, because that's quite a different experience, where you're turning up to a group and someone is leading and they're setting exercises every week or whenever, and the aim is that, you know, everyone develops along certain guidelines that's being set by that person. So I think that's normally quite a clear structure, and that will be very much driven by whatever that leader or that facilitator wants to do. So that's not really the sort of thing that I'm going to be talking about so much tonight. There might be, I'm jumping around a little bit, but there might be scope. Something that's worth considering is, if you're meeting weekly, that you take a different approach on different weeks. I'll come back to that in a minute, but I noticed in Dominic's notes to the people who have put up their hands and very kindly said that they will facilitate groups, that he suggested maybe meeting monthly initially to see how it goes, and then maybe increasing that to weekly. And I think that is a good plan. But there are ways in which, yes, you might be able to say you're going to meet weekly, but do different things. We'll come on to that in a minute, though. So, yeah, so being clear on what you want and what the aims of the group are. So thinking about the basics, I think, so if you're starting one up from scratch, or if you're very clear on what it is that you want to get from a group, and you want to reach out to people to come and join this group with you, I think you do need to sort of think, well, who is it aimed at? Because it might be, for instance, that you're all about poetry, and if you're all about poetry, I think actually, and I'm very, very happy to be proved wrong, because I'm not a poet and I've not been to any souling poetry workshops, but in my experience with people, if you've got a group where people are looking to take their writing to the next level, that doesn't always work brilliantly well if you've got fiction writers and poets in the same space. So I think maybe if you've got a very specific genre, or not genre, but if, say, you're particularly interested in screenwriting, you're particularly interested in script writing, or you're particularly interested in poetry, it's probably going to work more efficiently for you if you find like-minded people who want to do the same thing. Something that comes up in terms of genre otherwise, I think fiction is fiction generally, and I'm in a writing group that I'm in. We have, I suppose, a lot of them are sort of literary type of fiction, but we've had people doing quite literary fiction. There's Claire Fuller. I don't know if you know her. She's won the Costa Award or Women's Prize for quite literary fiction, sitting alongside Beth Leary, who wrote The Flat Share. Yeah, and that's worked really well. So very commercial women's fiction sitting next to literary fiction, sitting next to short stories. So I think if you're in that kind of arena, I think that can work really well. And I know that I've been in groups where people are working on romance, people are working on thriller, people are working on memoir, and that's worked completely fine. So I don't think you need to worry too much about being genre specific. And another area where I think it can help if you find like-minded people is if you're particularly interested in writing for children, that sort of young adult or young children. Oh, someone joining us. Yes, in that sort of children's arena, because that again is a slightly more specific marketplace. So it might be worth finding out what it is that people are are going to be writing, are going to be wanting to develop. Then something that came up quite a lot with people who have approached me about writing groups recently is about level of accomplishment. And especially if it's people who are looking to develop their writing, particularly those people who are serious about publication and they want a writing group to help take them towards publication. There's a concern that they want to be in a group of people of a similar standard to them. And I do understand that. And I think it can be disconcerting for people at both ends of the scale if there is a vast divide in terms of professional experience. So if you're entering as a novice, or you're kind of quite tentative and anxious about your writing, it can be quite intimidating if you're there then with someone who's, you know, publishing their third book and is terribly confident. So you might need to have an awareness of that. And equally, the person who's published their 50th book and, you know, and is terribly confident might need to accept that they'll need to be a little bit more patient with someone who's not at that same level. So it can be a little bit tricky if you have got a vast kind of chasm in terms of experience. That said, how do you approach that when you're setting up a group? When I started mine, we all sort of knew one another. We'd come through from the same kind of route, so it was easier to do. But it might be something that you, if you're starting a group from scratch, you put out there from the beginning and sort of say, right, I'm looking for a group of fellow authors looking to publish in the children's market, young adult market, who've never written a book before but are serious about it. Or you kind of set out your stall, so to speak. Or it might be that you sort of say, I want to meet other fiction writers, and let's just kind of see how we all rumble along. But I think you need to sort of have that conversation. Maybe I know that there are groups I'm aware of them in London, I'm sure they're everywhere, where if you want to join an established group, they will ask you to submit a manuscript before you can join, and they'll sort of screen you at that stage, which might sound harsh, but it might be something worth considering if you have got an established group. So does anyone have any questions about that? Because that is a little bit of a tricky area. Is everyone okay there? Everyone's happy. Okay. Then the next thing is about how many people to have in your group. And I think that comes back to, again, the type of group that you have. I don't know if I kind of was clear enough when we first went through this, but just as a little recap, because I think it's appropriate to the numbers. I think if you've got a group where someone is very much leading and setting exercises each week, and everyone's kind of just sort of taking it all in, doing little bits of writing, then in a sense it doesn't matter how many people are in the group. If it got too big and unwieldy, it might be a problem. But there's not going to be such a constriction, except that you want to kind of maybe listen to what one another's written, so you wouldn't want to be waiting half an hour around the table once. So that it's not such a problem. So I think those kind of groups where you're all just getting together, you're maybe going, right, this week we're going to try talking about character, and we're going to try some character exercises, or this week we're going to talk about place, and we're going to try some place exercises, and we'll write a little bit and we'll share a little bit, something like that. Then again, there's not really going to be such a constriction on numbers. I think the numbers issue becomes a lot more pertinent if you're intending to have a group where people are going to be exchanging manuscripts and expecting or hoping to get feedback. So having sort of a critical feedback element to the group. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ursula Le Guin and her book Steering the Craft, which is a fabulous book, but she says something like, if you've got a group like that, she does some really good guidelines on running a group like that. And she says, basically, a group lives and dies by the fact that everyone has to read, everyone has to write. So in terms of basically saying, if you're in a group like that, where people are submitting manuscripts of feedback, everyone needs to commit to submitting something for feedback, and everyone needs to commit to reading everyone else's work. And once you've got that situation, and that's a really, really valuable sort of group to be in if you're looking to progress your work, and that's the sort of group that I belong to, then numbers really become an issue, because I think you want to have enough people in the group so that if a couple of people are ill, can't make it for whatever reason, it still works. But you don't want to have so many that you are sitting there for hours. And I think ideally a group would be restricted to probably somewhere between 6 to 10, 8 to 12, depending on how much time you've got for your group. So the group that I belong to has probably about, I don't think I've been there when there's been more than 7 people. I think we're probably around the kind of the 8 mark. And we would meet, we'd definitely be meeting for over 2 hours when we meet. And that gives us time to have a bit of a catch up and give feedback on everyone's manuscripts. So you can see that if there was 12 people or 15 people, it could turn into quite a long evening. I'll come back to that as a type of group probably in a little bit, just for this for now. So just thinking about numbers. There are other ways of managing it. So my next question actually was going to be, the next basic to consider is how often do we meet? And we sort of talked a bit about that already. So it might be that you start with monthly. It might be, because of the social thing and the support thing and the accountability thing, it might be that you decide that actually meeting weekly is going to be really valuable. So there might be an argument for saying that the group can be lots of different things. So maybe you meet for maybe someone different leads a workshop 1 week a month. Maybe you take turns at leading a workshop 1 week a month. Maybe you have a week where, for argument's sake, it's just social. Maybe you have a week where you bring someone in to do a talk, or maybe you go and have a writer's walk. And then maybe you have a week where it's manuscript week. Or maybe you have 4 weeks where you're doing just fun exercises in class, but you set aside an hour, half of that. So you might have some exercises for an hour, and then you set aside an hour for having for doing critiques, for doing feedback. So for example, you might have, I don't know, one person a week you give feedback to, or two people would probably be better. 2 people a week that you give feedback to. That would mean there'd be only 8 people in the group, so still need to work out the maths on that. But you get my idea. It's about, there might be ways of dividing it up so that you can have maybe a slightly bigger group and do feedback scattered throughout a month, or you just do it all in one particular hit. I think there can be some flexibility. I I'm going to come on a bit later to a particular writing group that I heard about that had some very clever ways of doing things. So I'll make a note to myself to come back to that as well. So how often to meet? Yeah, so basically, I suppose what I'm saying is, again, it depends on what what you're hoping to achieve from the group. Maybe, and I'm thinking of you people who have very wonderfully signed up for hosting the Writers' Havens. Maybe the first week you see who comes and you have these conversations and sort of take it from there. Maybe you have a think in advance about what it is that you would like to be leading, and set out your stall to a certain extent in terms of whether it's monthly, weekly, to work it out, seeing as you are the facilitator, work it out so how it will suit you best. Maybe before you meet the first time, you ask everyone to email you with expectations, what it is that they're looking for, and then see if there's some kind of middle ground. But I think obviously sort of in that first week or so, you're going to need to sort of set some kind of parameters, but maybe you set some and then go, we'll review in X number of weeks. That might be another way of doing it as well. It might be, like I said, that you say, I'm a facilitator here for now, and it might be that you're the person who keeps an eye on making sure that everyone gets the right amount of time, keeps things going, keeps things all kind of evenly balanced, but you let other people lead certain workshops, so that you kind of feel that you're not leading the whole thing, you're not having to be on top of it all the time, you're just kind of there in the background holding it together. So I think carefully if you're a facilitator about what's going to work for you as well. So just come back then to this writing group, this that I heard about. And it was a lady, some of you might have come across her, called Carol Brewer. And I met her when I was running a workshop at Hengistbury Head, and she came along, and she just moved down to Bournemouth, and she was looking for a writing group. And she was looking to try and find something like the one that she had in Slough. And the more we heard about this Slough writing group, we were all just like, this is marvellous. But she said, yeah, unfortunately, she tends to be in and out of the country, so she doesn't really want to set one up herself here. But I think there might be things that we could learn from it. So I'll just tell you, I got her to email me and sort of put down everything that she did in this writing group. And there might be elements of this that you want to incorporate into your group. So I think it was called the Slough Writing Group, and it might be something a bit more grand than that. But basically they all paid £35 a year, and that money went in a pot. And was obviously used for various things. They actually had a committee to help run it, and I think you'll understand why in a minute. So I think there was probably a chairperson. I think they had a PR person. They may well have had an events person, but they had a committee to kind of steer it, which might be a good idea. She said that every time they met, they would have an agenda, and they would go through minutes of the last meeting to begin with. And she said that really irritated her to start. But then she found that actually that was quite nice settling time, just to kind of go, right, okay, we're all here. And she said they did meet weekly, and what it was a mixture of, as I was sort of saying here, a mixture of workshops, taking turns to lead them. Sometimes there'd be talks. Sometimes they'd bring in someone, like she said, a local policeman. I was sort of thinking, oh, that's strange. But I thought, actually, if you're writing crime or thrillers, fabulous. Bringing someone who can give you the insight on that kind of thing. Sometimes they'd have talks. They'd have a competition, which was externally judged. They obviously got someone outside. Yeah, I don't know, but it was someone notorious. or famous for some reason, but to judge it. And she said that actually brought in a nice element of competitiveness as well between the writers, which was quite fun. They had socials as well. So they had a barbecue in the summer. They did a Burns night thing, which actually I used to do with my writing group, where we all had to write something for Burns night. They were community facing. I think they did some stuff with local schools. Sometimes they go for walks, but they also did have monthly manuscript critiques. So I'm guessing of the month, then that would be kind of like the sort of thing I was talking about, where one week it's a manuscript, another week someone's leading a workshop, another week someone comes in for a talk, another week, I don't know, up to you. But that, it might be something that you could learn from. She said that there were quite a lot of members, but probably I think on average about 10 turned up. But there would be sort of associate members who'd dip in and out, I don't know, maybe just for the socials. And what she's found since she moved down here was that she's found a manuscript critiquing group, which is great, but actually, just to reinforce what I said earlier, it doesn't allow much time for the social aspect because you're so focused on doing the critiquing. And I think she felt that was a little bit lacking, because I think especially, you know, for someone who's moved to the area and you want to make some friends and have writer friends, you don't want to just do the critique and then just walk off. So again, timings are something to bear in mind. I feel terrible just doing this long monologue and looking at all your lovely faces. I don't think I've seen any hands raised though. Are there any questions emerging at this point? Yes, Alice.
Sorry, just unmute there. I'm just a bit concerned about the exchange of manuscripts with regard to what liability we as the person running the group have.
Right.
There's tremendous amount of trust involved in handing your manuscript to someone. Are you talking partial manuscripts or whole manuscripts? Or...
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was being very, very misleading there. So no, what I mean when I talk about the manuscript is sections of. Sorry. So maybe this would be a good time for me to talk a little bit more about how my group works, which is very much a group that's about developing one another's writings, as well as all the support and loveliness. So what we do, and I think, again, looking at Ursula Le Guin and her steering the craft notes on how to run a writing group, I suspect that that Claire, who started the group, was driven by that. But it's been running now for over 10 years and it's worked really, really well. So the way we work is we meet monthly, and I find that's quite useful because we always know it's going to be, you know, the last Monday of the month or whatever. So it's quite easy for people to then keep that in their diary and not be missing ones. Whereas maybe when it's weekly, you're a little bit more relaxed about whether you miss the odd one. But I think when you're doing critique, as I said, Ursula Le Guin said, you know, you have to all commit to, you will all read, you will all write, and you will all be there. So we meet monthly. I say we, I've been terribly laxed, but they're very kindly keeping my chair warm for me to go back. So we meet monthly, and in advance, we all send an agreed amount of words into a group email. And this is something else that you might want to consider if critiquing is going to be part of your workshop structure, is how many words you agree to look at. So it might be, and again, that's what, you know, time comes into that, you know, and it's, of course, it's not just the time that you're giving to the bit that you're reading or you're critiquing on in the workshop, it's the time that it will take for you during the week in advance to read everything that's coming in. So, and again, that sort of impacts on the numbers that you have in the group. So you might want to say that it's always better to go by words rather than pages, by the way, because otherwise people just write eight point, very tightly written pieces of paper, and send in lots and lots of words. So it's better to have a limit on the word count. So for argument's sake, 2,000 words, 2,500 words, and that's what you would submit every month. Because I'm so lapsed, I'm trying to remember if it might actually be closer to 3, but you'd have to decide on what you think is a reasonable number. So we, in advance, and it has to be a week before we meet, in order to give people a full week to get to reading all the manuscripts. We agree to send, we send our scripts in to a group email, and we all read them. And then we all print them off, and we have had conversations quite often about environment and whether this is the best way of doing it, but this is what we found works well for us. We print them off and we make our notes on paper and take them with us to the meeting. And then at the meeting, we take turns to be critiqued. And it's quite standard practice. I don't know, some of you might already be doing this in writing groups, but the person who's being critiqued doesn't say a word. They have to just sit and listen. And there's a lot of very good reasons for that. And while the group discusses the manuscript. So they're not discussing the writer, they're just discussing the writing and what they've seen in front of them. What we tend to do is, and it's quite a nice kind of little divider between each person, is the author reads the first couple of paragraphs out aloud, and that's really quite nice because you get to hear it in her voice. It sort of settles you into it, reminds you of the manuscript that you're about to talk about, and then he or she sits quiet, and the rest of us then pretend they're not there, and they do a critique of it. And just sort of talk about the things that have worked for them, the kind of the bigger substantive stuff, the things they really liked, the things they didn't quite understand. And sometimes they'll end up having a conversation and sort of go, oh, so you thought that was happening? I thought that was happening. Oh, that's interesting. And so, and for the writer listening, and their job is just to listen and just to take notes. It's fascinating because you're getting that really useful feedback as to how your writing is landing with people. And if there was something that maybe the critiquers are really struggling with, they are able to ask the writer, but it will tend to be a yes or no question. And that might help to clarify and move the conversation on. And then you have a certain amount of time in which you offer your feedback. The rule then generally is that the person who's had their work critiqued thanks everyone very much, very politely, for their feedback. If they didn't quite understand something or they want to clarify something, they can ask that, and then you move on. So you don't get any kind of big debates between writer and critiquers about about any issues. And then we hand the writer our printed manuscripts where we've made some notes when we've been reading them at home, so then they can take those home as well and digest them and sort of take them in. Because often you find, I'm sure those of you that have already been through similar processes, someone will say something and you'll be a bit, they've got that completely wrong. And then you take it home and you go, oh, actually, or else you go, oh, well, okay, 3 people seem to get that completely wrong. So, maybe there's something to be learned here. So it's a hugely valuable process. In the group that I'm in, I think everyone is wonderfully talented. I don't include myself. Everyone is wonderfully talented, and most of them now are published. One really oddly hasn't managed to get over the line, but it just shows what an unfair and unjust world the publishing world is. But it's been absolutely invaluable to all of us in terms of, you know, sort of developing our writing. And so in going back to Alice's question, that is the longest answer you've ever been given to a question, Alice. In going back to that, so no, we're not kind of going, oh, here's the manuscript, but actually what tends to happen is we see books in progress, you know, so we end up, and that's the lovely thing again, going back to the support of a writing group, you know one another, you've been working together for, you know, 18 months, 2 years, and you see a book go its full course. Sometimes you'll identify in a group that there's some people whose opinions you value more than others. There's some people who seem to really get your writing, really understand your writing, some who don't, but that's fine. You know, that's the whole point. Having a broad church, going back to what I was saying earlier about, you know, having different people of different genres and maybe different levels of ability, isn't necessarily a bad thing, because your work is going to go out into the world and being read by all sorts of different people. So it is really useful. Does that help, Alice? Yeah. Okay. I'm kind of keeping an eye on time here as well. I've done a sheet, a printout on giving and receiving feedback, which sort of talks about the process that I've just gone through, but talks about it in a little bit more detail. And it's available on my website. So if you go to emmascattergood.com, it's also thecreativepath.co. But if you just go to emmascattergood.com, and if you hit to the I think it's called subscribe now button or something, but all you have to do is just go into that and put your email in, and then you'll get a link to download the feedback sheet, and then you can completely unsubscribe afterwards if you want. There's no commitment there. But you might find that quite useful to share with a group anyway, even if you're not planning on having a group that is quite so serious in its approach to feedback. Even if you're just doing exercises in a far more relaxed way and exchanging them, you know, listening to one another's writing, it might be a valuable thing to share with people, because it's about listening, you know, reading with respect, listening with respect. It's about yeah, there's a lot of tips in there about how you respond to other people's writing, because obviously, you know, as Alice said, there's a lot of trust in a group. One thing that's important to say, you probably already know this because I'm sure you've already been in groups of some sort, but I'm always very clear when I'm facilitating a group that what happens in the group is confidential and it stays in the group, and also that there's never any pressure. If it's not a manuscript reading driven group, and it's a more relaxed kind of writing group, then there's never any pressure going to be put onto people to share or do anything that they're uncomfortable with. So I'd always set that out at the beginning of a session, so say that these are the guidelines, you know, we respect one another, everything stays confidential. And so everyone's clear from the start. Okay. Just as a bit of fun, because I've been a bit intense for a few minutes, I did find a thing which talked about the world's worst workshop participants. And I find it quite interesting to kind of read it and sort of think, well, which one am I? So you could use this as a warning to people if you feel it's appropriate. And maybe for your job as a facilitator will be to kind of moderate all of these various people in your group, just to warn you. So according to someone called Cole, it was in a book, the world's worst workshop participants are the shadow, who shows up but doesn't share anything or engage with anything. The dominator, who doesn't draw breath and likes to talk in length about themselves. That's the challenging one. Then there's the star, who assumes their work is best, brags consistently about their achievements, and doesn't read anyone else's work. There's the grammarian, who obsesses with the minor errors and avoids conversations about the more substantive themes. There's the devil's advocate, who enjoys stirring up trouble and contradicts everyone just for the sake of it. There's the interrupter, who's impatient and impulsive and cuts other people off. I think I'm probably guilty of that one. There's the gossip, who talks about all the other members behind their back. And then I was going to add one, which I definitely am, and which is always worth banning from the group, particularly if you are doing feedback of any type, which is the apologizer. So I am the world's worst apologizer. I will send in my writing for feedback from the group, you know, with a paragraph of, oh, well, I'm really sorry, this is dreadful, I should have done this. And then even before I start reading, I start to do that as well. And that has to be completely banned, you know, like no apologies allowed. You know, this is the writing, just, you know, off you go. We all know people who do that. So. And that, I think, is probably that in terms of my monologue. Thank you, Hannah. I am sorry if I've rambled and gone in a zillion different directions. Nigel, do you mind if I turn to you, because you were the first here, and also I think Fiona and Louisa, who then kind of came in. You all sort of expressed early on, but well, Nigel, if we could start with you, that you were kind of waiting to see kind of who turned up to your group and where you might take it from there.
Yeah, very much so. I'm not sure what I'm expecting.
Have I confused you or have I helped you?
No, not at all. It's been very, very helpful.
Okay, so you're still feeling then that you'll come at the first meeting, maybe you'll wait and see what emerges.
Yes. And still that trepidation, as Fiona expressed, will anyone come at all?
Well, I think the other thing is, I mean, I don't know whether people are advertising it on the Facebook group, but I don't know whether you can just put out a wider shout out and see. Where are you doing yours, Nigel?
I'm in Parkstone.
Parkstone. Okay. Well, fingers crossed. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Has anyone else got any sort of questions or thoughts to share on the back of that? Has anyone got some things is there anything that I haven't mentioned that could be useful? No. Okay. Everyone's happy. I hope so. Well, look, I really, really wish you loads and loads of luck with, you know, those of you in particular who have signed up for facilitating groups. I think it's marvelous what you're doing. I think it's such a benefit to the writing community that there are people like you who are, you know, putting yourselves out there to go and sit in library spaces and see who turns up. So I think that's fabulous. I do hope it works really, really well. I think something I've not really touched on actually, but I wanted to mention as well very much, is that, you know, there is capacity for doing groups online. There are ways of making that work as well, particularly if it is about doing critiques. You know, we can meet like this. So using, again, the fabulous thing that we've got now through the Bournemouth Writing Festival is having these Facebook groups rammed full of people who are all interested in writing and all doing different things. And so I think that's a wonderful forum for people to sort of put their hand up and go, I'm writing picture books. I met 2 picture book authors the other week. You know, I'm writing picture books. Is anyone else there doing picture books? Could we start a group? Could we just meet online once a month? Or I'm writing young adult fiction. Is anyone else out there doing young adult fiction? Yeah, could we meet online, even if it was once every 2 months, but just kind of check in with one another, share manuscripts, share, partial, awful, and support one another, talk about opportunities that are coming up. Or maybe a group of people doing memoir might decide that they, that's quite a specific thing and they want to kind of all get together. Or just simply, I can't come to the writing groups that are being advertised in the libraries at certain times. Does anyone else up there feel the same and want to try and do something online, and we'll muddle along? So I just think, if we can, there are so many ways of making writing groups work, and we've got so many ways now of reaching one another. I hope that people can get what they want, and I know, like I said, from doing the one-to-ones with people, that there are a lot of people out there who are looking for trusted readers to give them feedback, who are looking for people to talk to about their work, who are looking for the social contact with other writers. And we're moving closer towards it. So my email, well, people can contact me if they've got any questions at all via the website. Like I said, it's emmascattergood.com. I'm very, very happy to respond to and sort of follow up on any of this in any way. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with me there. Or I'm not so great on Facebook, I must admit. I kind of pop up about once a month and go hi and make a bit of noise and then disappear again. But do sort of contact me directly. That's absolutely fine. I'm saying that looking at the lovely faces here in front of me, but obviously those of you who are seeing this via the recording as well. So I will say goodbye if there's nothing else to cover. And thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thank you to everyone who's turned up to watch this later on a recording. And thank you again to Dominic and the Writing Festival for making this all possible. Hopefully see you soon somewhere. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Emma. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.